All right, this is Crazy Bill TV. Today I want to talk about drift socks, or in the whitewater world, we call them sea anchors. The reason they're called drift sock because they're used for fishing. I've actually used it with my friend, Mr. Fish a Lot. I don't know if anybody's ever met Mr. Fish a Lot, also known as Alan Choi. He likes to fish a lot. And so the reason you throw out a drift sock is because it takes you with the current. In the whitewater world, and the way a drift sock work is whatever the size of your boat is, you're supposed to, the rope tied to the drift sock is like a parachute that opens and has a hole in the back that catches water. It's supposed to be 5 times the length of your boat. So say you have a 10-foot boat, 5 times that is 50 feet. So sometimes you want them shorter. In big water, it's fine to do 50 feet. Sometimes you want them like 10 or 20 feet, just enough to get you out. So, yeah, that's why. And then the reason you use a sea anchor is sometimes it's because, like in low head dams, if you get low head dams keep pushing you and pulling you in, they keep pulling you in. But when you release and throw the sea anchor out, because sometimes it takes 30 seconds to a minute and a half because it's got to deploy and the water's got to go through it and open up the parachute. Your ultimate goal in a low head dam is to get it past the boil break. Once that gets past the boil break, that's catching downstream flowing water. And then that force, that constant force of 50 or 100 pounds is what pulls you out. You'll see with creature crafts, they're doing like huge, big tricks. And then all of a sudden, boom, they stop and they came out. Well, that actually happened on the Yampa. They dropped into Mammoth and they were in there for a while. There's a video of it. I should probably put a link to it or in the description, show you the video. But yeah, they're doing big tricks and their chicken lines got tied up in their pins and clips in the pin. And so they got tied together, and two big 14-foot 10 boats are barrel rolling and backflipping together. The only reason they came out is because the sea anchor got loose. And once the sea anchor got loose, all these big tricks, it stops and then just slowly pulls them out. And when you pull a sea anchor back in, because I've used it a few times, you get stuck in a hole and someone's like, need a throw bag? This also keeps you from having to use a throw bag. It's your own self-rescue because you're throwing your own throw bag as a sea anchor. That's the person on the other end pulling you. So that's what the sea anchor does. It acts as that person. So, and I've used it. I've used it on the Russell Fork. There's right after El Horrendo. There's what's called surf hole, and I got in surf hole, and so I just threw it out, and like a minute and a half later, no hands, and out of the hole I came. I've also had to deploy it on double drop I call it double surf, on the North Fork of the American in Giant Gap. So yeah, it pulled me out, and then it got me out once, and then like literally I dropped in the second hole and I redeployed it again. So they work. I know another time that was used was on the Middle Fork Feather at super high water, like 3,900 to 4,100 CFS. All the books say go left, 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 left. Well, 4,000, 39, 40, it's all right, 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 right. So my friend Dallas, who was in lead 90% of the time on that recognizant trip to go grab boats, yeah, the last hole, he's like, I'm done. So like as soon as he dropped into it, he saw it, he immediately deployed it because like you can be in a hole for 50 minutes or you can be in the hole for 5 minutes. So, but yeah, sea anchors, they work. I like to dry mine out every time I pull out all the rope. I do that with my dry bags too. You want to make sure your gear is in good condition because if the rope snaps, I mean, it's not going to work. So that's what sea anchors are for. They are a comfort of mine. Most people won't get in big of holes as creature crafters do, but they even work with round boats. I've seen you don't even have to use the fabric sock. A 5-gallon bucket works too, in the same principle as a sea anchor or drift sock, because all you're doing is catching water and it's giving that 30 to 80 or 100 pounds of constant pull against you. My friends ran, what's that rapid? It's on the Dolores River. It's the main one, and it's a move where you come down and you got to make a left move, and there's a rock dead center. Like you got to cut right in front of it. Well, they pinned perfectly. They pinned perfectly, right, dead center, both perfect center. And so the way they got off was they threw a 5 gallon bucket out. Well, first they shifted weight. Anytime you get stuck, it's all about shifting weight. Make the boat lighter in one area and heavier in the other. So wherever it's stuck the most, you want to put the weight away from it the most, and then rock and push, and eventually the boat will give. If you can't get a boat out that way, then you can deploy a sea anchor, which will 99.9% I've seen get you out. There's always a chance it may not. It could get caught up on something too. So sometimes you can get out with a sea anchor, but if you don't immediately pull it back in, it can get caught up on something and then you're just caught again. You were caught in a hole, it got you out of a hole, but if you don't pull it in immediately, you get stuck again. So you have to release it. And then you lose a sea anchor, which they're not too terribly cheap. Probably with a 50-footer rope and the sea anchor itself, I don't know, you're probably 60 or $100 into it. So the other trick is once a sea anchor is deployed and does what it's supposed to do, immediately pull it back in. And mind you, when you pull it in, it's like 80 to 100 pounds because it's full of water. You're just going to be like, you feel like you're catching a big fish, and it's going to be full of water. So just keep pulling and pulling. And then the next thing you have to deal with the sea anchor, once you have it in, is you have all this rope. You have all this rope. So if you can't immediately like get pulled over, take all that rope and stuff it under your leg because you don't want to have all this rope everywhere. That becomes an entanglement. So you temporarily want to stuff it under your leg. So if you got to do movement, if you're in a catboat or if you're in a raft or if you're in a creature craft, you usually want to stick it under your thigh. And then when time allows or when the opportunity comes, pull into an eddy. Usually it's fairly quick, usually within a couple 100 feet, no more than a quarter or half a mile. Pull into an eddy and take the time to restuff it because you never know when you're going to need it again. It's the same thing with the throw bag. Once you release and deploy a throw bag and you didn't hit them the first time, you always have to coil it back up like a cowboy because you're going to like wrangle and throw the rope again. But then once you're done with it, you should always take the time and stuff your throw bag because you never know when you're going to need it again. So, because that's why it's called a throw bag. So I'm going live and someone's calling. But anyway, yeah, you want to make sure your throw bag is what you call it is stuffed. So, and ready to go for the next use or next time you got to use it. And you can get these sea anchors, and then there's different sizes. There's like a 24-inch, and it's the outer diameter, I think, of the head of the cone. I think there's like 24, 36, 54, and they go bigger. There's like 48-inch ones. I mean, like you can fit inside of them. You don't really need them that big. A smaller one is better. So, but yeah. So sea anchors, they can save your life. They can get you out of a situation. It can turn a whole ride from 50 minutes to 5 minutes to 3 minutes. So they work. And if you know immediately you're stuck, you can immediately deploy it. So within a minute, then 30 seconds to a minute and a half, it'll be deployed. The other reason you want to dry out your ropes is because when you keep a rope stuffed all the time, it keeps that memory of it. So that's why you always want to pull out your ropes and let them not also to dry, but also to get the memory out of the rope. So it'll actually do it instead of all being coiled up and like bunched, because that's how it's stored. That's why it needs to be used. So anyways, Crazy Bill with Crazy Bill TV. Just bringing to you a little bit about sea anchors because they've actually gotten me out multiple times. You got Kabong out twice on the Russell Fork. What is it? 3 doors. I think it's called 3 doors. And he went to the third door, which is the furthest. I'm like, I've never seen anybody go that way. Well, he went and he got a little stuck and threw out the sea anchor, got out, pulled it out. And then in El Horrendo, he went too far right and got shoved into the wall. It got him out, but the problem is he didn't pull it back in immediately. Again, once the sea anchor does its job, pull it back in immediately, or you'll possibly lose it or get hung up. Like once it does what it needs to do, get it back out of the water. As we always say, ropes are hazards, right? And then you got this big thing, you got this big anchor, you got this big surface area that can catch stuff, and it's taking a rope with it. So you got to make sure you get it back in. Anyway, this is Crazy Bill, Crazy Bill TV. Always remember it's class 2, plop and drop until you swim.